I think Tom is a good orator. I think Tom can come up here and keep us busy for at least an hour, two. Cheer for Tom.
Hi, my name's Tom, and after Billy got done, I don't really know what to say. I'm really very new around here. I've only been here 52 years. I got very lucky, and after I come home from President Johnson's field trip, I didn't fit in down in the flats anymore. My grandparents lived in Center Lake Woods. In fact, they were Laura's neighbor. So my wife and I migrated up here, and I was lucky enough to join a volunteer fire department. Fire departments have changed over the years 1,000 times, and now it's more traditionally based and volunteer based. But it used to be all volunteers, and people just did it for the good of the community and had a great time and helped each other out every day. Obviously, Team Edmonds is around here with the fire truck. When I became chief, I was the chief for around 30 years, I think. The fire department needed to get younger because it was all guys like Billy's dad, Roger Phillips, Don Happ Sr., and those guys were all getting a little long in the tooth. I met Chuck Edmonds because he was involved in basketball at the grade school, and I thought, man, I got to get this guy. Little did I know it was a package deal. I didn't know that there was like a dozen Edmonds boys that would show up, and they were, and still are, mainstays to the community fire department. And the fire departments used to be able to do anything. We used to have a huge Easter egg hunt. Now you guys are, the tavern is doing one here, but we would do an Easter egg hunt where we dyed 97 dozen eggs. And the guy that owned Sonny's Bait Shop down in Wilmot, Mr. Kishner, would get us these bicycles for $7 and we would raffle them off. And you don't get bicycles for $7 anymore. And they'd still all be in the box, you know. But we always had a very good time. Obviously there were fires like Badger Cork where there was human loss, and then at the other factory there was obviously, it was a $1 million fire. And it set a lot of records statewide because when the plant that's still there burnt at one time, we hauled over 3 million gallons of water between 7 o'clock and 11 o'clock in the morning. And we used 45 tankers. And we ran so many tankers up and down this road, they had to repave a couple of the roads after we were done because they started to belly up all over and crush a lot of the culverts that went under all the roads. But we saved the building, and you know, it's still there today. People are still working there, even though I think now it's owned by different people. At that time it was owned by a man named Mr. Fleck. But one of my greatest remembrances of this building were all these old people that used to live in Trever. Many of them are long gone now, like Mr. and Mrs. Pagel, you know, Elva Mata, you know, they all hung out here. They used to con me into coming. There was a bunco game here once or twice a week, and they would send me on errands to go to the little grocery stores around here and pick up like a dozen eggs for a prize and all of this stuff. And these little old ladies would sit in here all day and play bunco, whatever bunco is, and were ecstatic because they won a dozen eggs that were probably worth about 20 cents a dozen at that time. Now if you want a dozen eggs, you need an armed guard to get home with it. But for a long time, then when the Historical Society kind of merged with the social thing, I called this the Hysterical Society, because Red Miller took me up to Baum Field to this schoolhouse, and he looked at me, and there's pictures of it in here. He goes, how are we going to get this back to Trever? I said, we're not. I said, but for $25 I'll burn this building down. He goes, oh, no, we want to save it and move it to the Historical Society. Well, just like everything else around here, it got done by committee. Guys from the fire department went up there cutting trees, and part of the trees come right up through the floor. I took my wife up there to show her where we were spending our free time, and you couldn't walk. There was no floor left. You were walking just on the joists. And obviously there was raccoons living in there that were as big as German shepherds. And then Roger Phillips and his son come up with a device that went off the backhoe to pop part of the joists loose. And then there was this great guy around here called Phil Kale. And he was a colonel in the Army Corps of Engineers. And they would drill on weekends. So one weekend drill was they brought a tank retriever and they lifted that school up and brought it here and set it down. And I don't think there was a lot of permits involved. I think it was just, you know, a bunch of guys from here, the fire department, and the Army Corps of Engineers. Because when we got to Brass Ball Corners, there was a brass ball that hung down. And it was only 14 foot high. So John Rieselman, who was the Salem fire chief, had a little bucket truck aerial, and he kind of held the ball in the air by hand while they drove the schoolhouse underneath it. And then kind of beg, borrow, and steal, they got guys who came from the state or something to keep it historically correct and finished off that building. And that's kind of, I think, why this became called Miller Park, you know. And, you know, they always said, you know, that Lion Red lived right across the street and they could keep an eye on this building 24 hours a day. Well, they kept an eye on this building 24 hours a day, the schoolhouse, the fire department. They were really very unique people. But yeah, the fire department opened a lot of avenues for me. I did a couple years on the school board. I got a job with the highway department. And I had a pretty good time up here, and all I was a refugee looking for safe harbor, you know, and I met a lot of great people. So that's about all I got to say. And if there's a railroad cistern over here, and in that picture up there that's got the fancy building, see the little cinder block building behind there? Okay, underneath there, there's a well. And the well's about 40 feet deep. And you get down there on a platform, and the water's about up to here, and you can feel valves. Well, the valves sent water to them water towers that they fed the cattle with. So anytime I was in there, me and Billy changed the pump once, and me and Tommy Wilton changed the pump a couple times. And you used to have to go in there and clean stuff out of there. And I was always very careful not to step on a valve because I didn't want to flood the feed mill, you know. But I'm very thankful for this community. I'm glad this building's here. I look at a lot of this stuff, and it's in a historical society. To me, it was all things that I saw around here as I became very, very old. The turkey farm down here, you can see the boxes up there in the display case. It was the most unique building in this area. It was just gorgeous inside.
Oh yeah, I'll agree.
Yes, I mean, she had all these beautiful staircases and all that stuff. It was just gorgeous, you know.
Oh, it was. I know upstairs in one bedroom, I mean, it was big. And her closet had pink satin. They had pink satin closets.
Yeah.
You pull the doors open on and near. My friend lived there for a little bit. They rented it when they were in between. She rented it for. So I got to see it was just like that.
When the town took the property over there, we went over there to look what was in the building, and that's where some of these wrappers came from. Your ex-husband grabbed them and brought them and gave them to Red, and Red put them up in here. And we also found a 56 Cadillac in there. But regretfully, kids had broken into there and destroyed the whole car. and it only had like 900 miles on it when they parked it in that barn. So we kept thinking, man, it was, you know, the car was probably worth $1 million if they hadn't wrecked it. You know. All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Played with, and I didn't go there.